Well, my dear fellows, colleagues, ladies and sir, students and all the friends of the usability and accessibility, the computer-human interaction, the human-computer interaction, and as I said this morning, the human-computer-human interaction, which put a more significant point to the communication between humans, meditated, if you like, through the computer, mediated through the computer, and in between, as we say. So this roundtable has the theme design over online world. Design of our online world, trust, ethics, and integrity. We have with us in this table, with the assistance of Konstantinos Mourlas and Panagiotis Germanakos, three international accepted and well-known scientists. And I start with the presentation of Esma Aimeur. Let me find out. I'm sorry, I cannot remember all what is Esma, Andreas, and Gard. So Esma Aimeur is professor at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Montreal and director of the Artificial Intelligence and Cybersecurity Laboratory. She obtained her PhD in computer science, artificial intelligence, from the University of Paris 6, Pierre Marie Curie, France. She works on privacy and security, applying artificial intelligence techniques to manage personal data in different fields, such as education, finance, and medicine. Her most recent research focuses on online deception, be careful, the ethics of artificial intelligence, social networks, fake news, security awareness, recommender systems, and privacy preserving. She is currently co-editor of the International Journal of Privacy and Health Information Management, associate editor for IEEE Transactions on Big Data, and for Artificial Intelligence for Human Learning and Behavior Change. I would like to ask you, dear Esma, to speak and position, if you like, yourself on the topic of today for 5, 6, 7 minutes. And then after a tour of the table of your position on the topic, we'll have some questions that I will put on the table, and then the floor will be on the audience. Yeah. So the floor is to you, Esma. Thank you very much, Esma. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are pleased to have with us and Mr. Gard Titlestad from Norway, an old friend of mine from the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education in Moscow for 8 years now. Gard is a recognized international expert within the field of higher education, research innovation, and digital transformation. He has comprehensive experience as senior manager. He has been working for the Nordic countries, for the European Union, and globally. While serving in his position, he has also worked as an evaluator of research projects for the European Commission's Research Framework Program, coordinator of International Research and Innovation Project, and as a facilitator for collaborative innovation initiatives. Gard retired in 2018 as Secretary General for the International Council for Open and Distance Education, ICDE. In ICD, he worked in close partnership with UNESCO for the new sustainable development goals. Collaboration between institutions, associations, companies, and individuals was a key priority for him. Gard, you are welcome again here in Athens, I mean virtually, so the floor is yours, my dear.
Thank you, Michalis. It is a great pleasure to be here, to be invited. And it is also a pleasure to think about that we will meet again in Athens in not too long, I hope. So let me go directly to the agenda for today. And since I entered the online world, internet and the web, early in the 1990s, then I was in cancer research, e-health, and later e-commerce. And those words you have selected for today was already then close to me. I could add that in my current work with platforms for co-creation and sharing doctoral courses in an online world in Europe and in Africa, and my recent work on the UNESCO IT strategy, these words have become even closer, together with the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I asked myself, what is the biggest change when it comes to design of our online world I can observe? And I think it is the platforms driven by technology guidance and used on a daily basis of billions. And this was already very, very good, introduced, quite specific by my colleague in the previous presentation. They all have a tempting design, making us as users to gravitate around those platforms as they were black holes in the universe, or maybe honey for the bears. And then the question is, how do they care for trust, ethics, and integrity? Within this short time, I will touch upon a few examples, not all of these, but head on, what is happening when it comes to social platforms? Well, almost 60%, as you can see at the right, of the world's population are active on social platforms, almost 5 billion soon now. And these 5 billion soon, in average, use 2.5 hours a day on social platforms only. And in average, 6.7 platforms are used. Now, a few years ago, the conservative newspaper of Norway brought this observation by the technology giants, as you can see here, Facebook, Apple, Google, and Amazon. And they looked at them and draw them as robbers, as bandits, gangsters that took a lot of money from the countries like Greece, countries like Norway, took a lot of money, profit, and paid no taxes. Even back to education, for example. Now, this year, one important milestone came in place, namely, they have to pay a minimum of 15% tax on their earnings. The biggest countries of the world agreed on that. So that is a step forward, but we are not in goal. We are not achieved the goal yet. The second example, let me now turn on the full screen sharing. That is how Facebook and Google fund global misinformation. And you all know the papers that just have been published. And in a week ago in MIT Technology Review, it was also published that they not only let their platform being used for fake news, etc., creating a lot of conflicts around the world. No, they are even paying those actors millions of dollars for producing that shit. And the consequences from the example Myanmar is so tragic. The consequences on how these dangerous fake news and clickbaits put fuel on the flames already led to the death of 10,000 Rohingyas and the displacement of 700,000 more. So this is not only theoretical breaks on ethics, etc. It is gruesome acting for bad purposes around the world. Now, let us look at the next example. This week, Nordic ministers for labor met in Copenhagen, and the Director General of the International Labour Organization gave a speech where he said, don't underestimate the risk of platform working, Uber, Foodora, etc. And we are at risk at creating a new underclass of workers if we let these platforms organize the work as they want to do. So the other direction to go, which is indicated on the left here, is the direction suggested for the ministers this week, that they need to organize the rights, the human rights, the workers' rights of the platform workers. If not, as the Director General of ILO said, it will bring us back to the 18th hundred. You remember the year of the MOOCs, 2013, where Sebastian Trond said, in 50 years, there will be only 10 institutions in the world delivering higher education, and Université has a shot being one of them. You remember this. Now, that was just fake, we thought. But previous year, this article was published in Intelligencer that Scott Galloway predicts a handful of elite cyber universities will soon monopolize higher education. So what is this? Is this what we call old wine or new bottles? Or is it more, as we can observe here from Holland IQ, that we have since 2015-16 seen an explosion of online platforms, collaborative platforms between university, between commercial actors and the universities, etc., etc. So that has been exploding up to this year. This year, the number will be the highest anytime. So the number of platforms for online educations, for commercial purposes, for free or for whatever, is very rapidly increasing. And now we have not taken into account those 42 university alliances that are created by funding from Erasmus Plus program and European Framework Program. 42 platforms, including almost 300 universities, mostly public, have been created, and they will for sure build online platforms to serve their purposes. I bring you this slide because I think many of the slides that you read from UNESCO publications and others, they show that there is progress in the world, but I think this slide from Thomas Piketty sums it all very well up. And the progress in life expectancy, in literacy rate, and up to our time has been, overwhelming. This is very good news. On the other hand, this has not come for free. There are huge fights. There are huge hinders that have been removed to achieve this. And therefore, the question is, the platforms, their purpose, their direction, their ethics, their integrity, does that serve these higher ambitions of serving the people of the globe? Well, I think we are all in doubt. So therefore, we need to meet this digital platform revolution with clear expectations. For example, that they are built on human rights, that they respect and will contribute to sustainable development goals, and that they respect this week the unique agreed global agreement on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Piketty, by the way, he suggests in his latest book that the best solution for the problem of the platforms is to define all big platforms, those that are used by a significant part of the population, as systemic and treat them, so to speak, as public service with a strict regulation of algorithms and respect for basic rights. And I agree with Piketty in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gard. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear friends, it's an honor to have with us Andreas Holzinger. I'm sorry, but technology has always difficulties. Well, so Andreas Holzinger leads the human-centered artificial intelligence lab Institute for Medical Informatics Statistics at the Medical University, Graz, and is a visiting professor at the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute in Edmonton, Canada. Andreas pioneered in interactive machine learning with the human in the loop. For his achievements, he was elected a member of Academia Europaea in 2019, the European Academy of Science, and as a member of the European Laboratory for Learning and Intelligent Systems in 2020. The use of artificial intelligence in domains that impact human life, agriculture, climate, forestry, health, has led to an increased demand for trustworthy artificial intelligence. Andreas is working together with his group on generic methods to promote robustness and explainability to foster security AI solutions and advocates a synergistic approach to provide human control over AI and to align AI with human values, ethical principles, and legal requirements to ensure privacy, security, and safety. Dear Andreas, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Michael, thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and thanks to Panagiotis and Konstantinos for the nice invitation, old friends. So I would be happier if I could now have a nice coffee with you in Athens, in beautiful Athens, but as we know, we are locked down in this pandemic. So hopefully it will go away and we will meet in vivo again in the future. Yeah, I have no slide deck for you, but I can share something with you which fits nicely to the beautiful talks of Esma and Gard. And I would share my slide now because this is a recent paper we have written, and I will share my slides. So do you see the slide now, the screen now?
Yes, Andreas.
Super. So recently we have published the 10 commandments of ethical medical AI. And I sent you then the link with the DOI identifier for reading afterwards, but maybe briefly, very briefly, I can go through this because this fits nicely to what has been said before. So artificial intelligence, there is one very, very important aspect. This is our number one of our 10 commandments. And why 10? This is not an incident because, you know, there are 10 commandments and this is closely to this 10 core commandments. So first of all, to our opinion, it must be recognizable that and which part of all is a decision or an action is taken and carried out by an AI. So this is very important that we know which decision has been taken by a human or by a machine. And this was a wonderful example by Esma before. And this leads to the second commandment. It must be recognizable which part of the communication is performed by an AI agent, by the computer, whatever you call it. And the third is then exactly what also Gard and Esma emphasized. So the responsibility for an AI decision, action, or communicative process must be taken by a competent physical or legal person. So it must be the human. And this leads to the fourth commandment then: AI decisions, actions, and communicative processes must be transparent and explainable. And this means explainable to a human. Of course, this is difficult and this is not always possible and not always wished, because if you go into a car and you use your car, it's also not necessary that you understand exactly what is below the bonnet. But in the case of an emergency or an accident or whatever, an expert must have this understanding to find out the underlying, let's say, contributing factors which leads then to this accident or whatever. And then the fifth commandment is an AI decision must be comprehensible and repeatable. And I think repeatable, this is at the core. So you are all scientists, you know, we want to repeat an experiment. We want to have this ensurement that we can repeat it. So this is a very, very important aspect, that it must be repeatable at all times, ideally. And an explanation of an AI decision must be based on state-of-the-art scientific theories. So this is not necessarily, let's say, a real strong commandment, but it should be a possibility that you have this insight into the most recent technology, or whatever you call it. And then seventh commandment, an AI decision, action, or communication must not be manipulative by pretending accuracy. So this is, I think, also very in line with Esma and Gard. And the eighth commandment is then an AI decision, action, or communication must not violate any applicable law and must not lead to human harm. So this is a very, very strong commandment. And the ninth is then an AI decision, action, or communication shall not be discriminatory. And we have seen such an example by Esma and Gard as well. And the 10th and last commandment is then the target setting, the control and monitoring of AI decision, actions, and communication shall not be performed by algorithms. This is not theoretically, this was a work of 1.5 years. So we stated these commandments and we asked the international research community. So we collected data we asked the people to rate this, and you can read it in the paper afterwards. I sent you the link so you can read it then in the evening or in the morning when you enjoy your coffee. And so far, this was just for the let's say, instead of some slides, so that you have something to see. But I'm now here in the panel hopefully for a nice discussion and hopefully for helping to answer some questions. And I'm really very grateful that you have done this in Athens. And thanks again to the invitation. And thanks to Esma and Gard for the nice previous talks. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Gard. Thank you, Esma. Well, I have in front of me some questions that were prepared by colleagues of the organizational committee, and I have to put that questions on the table. So I start with some questions for Esma Aimeur. What are, Esma, the different kinds of ethical issues that may occur in a human's interaction with data-driven artificial intelligence systems? For example, is bias an issue, and how can it affect us?
Yeah, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you very much for the question. I guess, of course, we are facing several issues, and the bias is one of the worst, I guess. So what are the impacts? I mean, someone can lose his job. Someone can lose his reputation because when the programmer is putting some bias in, as we have seen for Amazon, for example, women were hoping to get a job and they couldn't for 4 years, right? And discrimination upon our IP addresses, etc. So we are losing opportunities. And not only, sometimes the reputation is being damaged. Sometimes phishing attacks are more powerful because the systems has been biased, etc. So this is like really an issue that we have to address. And I think other issues are, for example, the transparency. For example, there is a movie. The name of the movie is Searching. It's a guy. His daughter was 15 years old, and she has been misled by someone who was. The name was Fish and Chips. And it was not transparent at all. The daughter thought that the guy was a lady, and this person was using something that we call liking, Cialdini principles for persuasion and manipulation. He has 6 principles, and the book is just wonderful, an amazing book about persuasion. And one of those principles was liking, like reciprocity, social proof, liking, etc. But liking was the basic for this movie. And Fish and Chips was saying to the daughter, I like you, I feel your pain, you lost your mother, I lost my mother as well. And they start talking. And the platform was not transparent as well, not at all. And I don't want to tell you what happened in the movie, but the thing is, since the platform are not transparent and people can hide themselves very easily, everything can happen. So this is just an example. Okay.
Thank you, Esma. Thank you. I have a second question to you, Esma.
Yes.
What does it mean to have a responsible artificial intelligence, and how can we achieve it?
Oh, okay. So I think, you know what, when I was one of the experts that have been, let's say, they asked us what are the principles for AI for good. We got these 10 principles, and my colleague Andreas has already told I mean, he has already cited those principles, more those who are, so responsible AI doesn't mean anything, I think. Well, sorry, what I want to say, it's not, I mean, the technology is neutral. I mean, responsible AI means responsible people. We are the person who are, I mean, programming AI, producing AI, you know, explaining AI. So responsible AI means responsible people who are using AI. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Esma. And now is Gard Titlestad. And I have some questions for you, my dear Gard. Well, based on your vast and fascinating journey in the areas of open and distance education, what ethical issues and challenges do you see, Gard, arising worldwide due to the inevitably sudden adoption of online learning technologies? This is.
Well, I should say that the first issue is, in fact, very, very simple. That is the issue of access. And I think that the pandemic demonstrated how cruel the gaps are in our world, but not only between developing countries and developed countries, but also within countries. Within rich countries, there are huge groups that cannot have access. So they don't have access to education when the society is closed down, or they have access to, well, not good education. And if this is not tackled during our next period, let's say 4 to 10 years, it might be a setback you will observe in Piketty's curve. So that is the most serious seen from my point of view, the access issue. But there are others as well. And one thing that I think caused a lot of concern, that is how personal data of students is used when you apply typically more personalized learning. I think this is a big issue because it can give significant improvements of education, but not all respect that this has to be developed and implemented in an ethical way with respect to each individual that is taking part in, for example, learning analytics. So that is the second issue I would like to say, which is similar to those that was presented by my colleagues with the respect for personal data, etc., which is too low worldwide and among big providers. Well, I think to be short, I stop here, but as long as you know that artificial intelligence is more and more implemented also in education, and maybe in particular in distance education, the same concerns are there, and these 10 points demonstrated will be very important to validate what is provided with the glasses of these 10 commandments. Thanks.
Thank you, Gard. Thank you very much. So, a question for Andreas. In a recent article you co-authored, titled The 10 Commandments of Ethical Medical AI, you spoke on that a little earlier, you proposed, as we saw, a checklist of practical guidelines concerning AI and ethics and the use of AI in medicine. Can you highlight the principles that specifically relate to human-computer interface and interaction and propose human-centered methods to design interfaces so as to support ethical dimensions such as privacy, security, and safety? Thank you.
Michael, wonderful question, wonderful question. I wanted to go to lunch with the person who asked this question because this is a brilliant question. And I want to start to answer this question by referencing to Esma, because I liked what Esma said about responsibility. Yeah, and responsibility is a pure human. So we are responsible, we as humans, because artificial intelligence is more stupid than you think. Okay, so it is about humans, how to use this in a wise way. And humans are responsible for this. So this is very good what Esma said, and I want to emphasize this. And this nicely fits to answering this question, because the most important aspect to enable this responsibility of the humans is exactly this human AI interfaces. And I say now human AI interfaces and not human computer interface to emphasize that interfaces now have changed. If you look at your smartphone, 10 years ago, there was no smartphone. Yeah, now we have all these smartphones, but these smartphones have a different interface than the classical keyboard and the screen on the wall and so on, or the punch card. So, for example, I have here a punch card from my early times. Yeah, you see it. And this was formerly the interaction with computers to exchange numbers. And now we have a complete different interaction. For example, with these smartphones, they are listening to you, yeah, at all times. And think on this Siri and all this stuff. This is amazing. And this implies a complete rethinking of these human AI interfaces. And indeed, to enable what Esma said, it is important to take care of exactly these interfaces that a human is able to understand the artificial intelligence or whatever you call it. So this interaction becomes a very, very strong let's say, importance. And this goes far beyond the classical human-computer interaction as it was in the early 70s or in the 80s. So I'm really very grateful for you guys, because you take this seriously and you see, you bring this to a new state. So this Kai is more important than you think in the future, because it is exactly the answer to this question. The strong engagement of the human is mandatory to enable this responsibility on demand. I say on demand. Sometimes you want to do it automatically, or you let it do it automatically. Yeah. So, for example, in medicine, you let the routine work, for example, you can do where you can trust it. But for the difficult cases, you still need the human in the loop, because the human has something which no artificial intelligence has on this planet, because the human has this conceptual understanding. So we have this call it gut feeling or whatever you want, but we have this sense if something is true or not, because we have a long experience. So, for example, Michael is a wise professor. He has a long experience. We cannot replace him with just a deep learning algorithm which learns this in a fraction of a second. So we should really bow before the human, let's say, the quality of this long experience which lasts. It takes a long time. Until Michael was such an experienced, wise professor, it takes a long time. But these people are important, because we need this knowledge, and we need to interact this knowledge with the new stuff, with these algorithms, and this would lead exactly to the answer of the question. This needs new AI interfaces to combine the wisdom, the knowledge, the conceptual understanding of the human, the experience of the human with, for example, the number crunching capabilities of deep learning algorithms. But the conceptual understanding is here. This is in your head. No artificial intelligence on this planet can replace your thinking, your head. You are important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you. Before give the floor to be managed for the audience by Associate Professor Konstantinos Moulas and Dr. Panagiotis Germanakos, and as all of you excellent speakers of the today roundtable referred to Esma, I dare my friends to say, Esma forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the floor on you, Moulas and Germanakos.
Thank you very much for interesting discussions and comments. The participants' comments that they have received excellent information about you and your thoughts and your talks. I don't know if we have any more questions from the participants. I have one in my mind that we're talking about the use actually of AI techniques in interfaces and trust and all of that. And I can see that, okay, when a technique needs more human experience, as Andreas said, it's good to have the human to increase the precision of these results. But since we have in our case, everything is represented by vectors that have thousands of features, and we're trying all the time for the services to have a better prediction in the recommendations in order to be more successful financially. It's difficult for them to delete some of the features that are not ethical and in order to have a less prediction. So they prefer to create these black boxes and have a better income, because there are organizations that try to sell products or to hire people or to do so much things. So what is your opinion? There is a trade-off between precision and trust and explainability. So, any comment on this? What is your
Okay, can I give a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I mean, there is no clear answer. That's what I say to my students, because they need badly a service, though, so they are willing to disclose the information no matter what, right? So speaking about the recommendations, and well, I do understand, because there is a pressure and they need to make money, right? But at the same time, it depends. If you speak about the human being, he has to be very careful. And we've been interested in knowing what are the information, why people are disclosing information, for example. Is it just for the service, or are there any other reasons? If I may share my screen, can I? Excuse me.
Yes,
can I share my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to show you something. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Okay. Okay. Because I have prepared some slide to show you. Yeah, that's the one. Do you see this?
Yes, you can see.
Yes. So basically, people are disclosing information not only because it's a financial gain. We have seen that some people have some personal gain, others have moral gains. Okay. And some others are just doing this for consistency because their friends are doing so they want to do the same. And others because they have a cognitive bias, and all of us have cognitive bias, right? But some have like bias which are really towards financial gains, for example, you know. And finally, others, they are so desperate, so they say, okay, there is no control anymore. Why should I keep for me my personal data? I can sell it, okay, no problem. So all these issues have been raised, and you know, there is no clear answer nowadays. What I really think, it's maybe we are just cutting the edges because it's somehow too late. Because you know, the GAFA are doing money, and even if the European Commission, European collect whatever, I don't know exactly the name, they are asking them to pay. Even if they pay, they will continue to having this control. It's nothing for them, you know. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Esma. I think we can proceed to other questions that they have from participants. Let's start with Lefteris Papachristos that raised the hand. Lefteris. Cannot see Lefteris.
Okay, so now you can see me. Technical issue. Okay, so my question to everyone actually is that in academia we are usually very keen in identifying problems and then try to create awareness about issues, and a lot of issues has been mentioned here today, especially about AI and stuff like that. But the way forward sometimes is, I would say, through policy. And so I would like to ask any of the panelists about their views about the latest policy, for example, that came out in April of 2021 in regard to harmonization of AI European-wide. So they're talking about testing, robustness, social robustness, and also in Horizon 2021 projects now, AI is a horizontal consideration, and they also talk about robustness, social robustness, issues like that. So what are the views of the panelists about if this type of initiatives through policy or through some institutions like the European Union can actually create change and help towards the direction of fair AI and unbiased AI?
Yeah, I can try to respond on the more general question here. Academia is extremely important in providing oversight of issues that are of human concern, and has a big responsibility and task to do so, and to simplify issues so they can be communicated so consumers can understand, that stakeholder groups can understand, and of course politicians can understand. Unfortunately, sometimes scientists, they dig down all the findings, reflections in 2 long papers that will not be read, in particular by politicians, ministers. So I could say this because I've been working on that field for many years, both in the European Union and in the Nordic, among the Nordic countries. So point 1, don't underestimate the importance of academia to provide the different arenas with findings that are important for human beings' development. Extremely important. And then when you provide that, interact in a way where you also have to show courage. Sometimes good scientists are a bit afraid to be attacked by colleagues, so they safeguard their findings. But I think they should be more open-minded both ways, both in taking some risks in presenting findings, but of course inform about the risks, and in taking criticism from colleagues in a way that bring those issues forward. So that is my experience for a longer period when I worked with climate change, energy, and environment, which are so important for a sustained world, right? And I don't think the issues are different when it comes to artificial intelligence, platforms, etc. It is maybe more important because most people find artificial intelligence like blue air, right? Or some scary that they can't handle at all. So I think that is a very important responsibility of the scientists. And all that said, those different arenas have to be mobilized and be led by factual findings and not fake findings. I think that is an extremely important thing we have learned for the last 3-4 years, how dangerous it is if the different groups are taken away by fake news. So that is a very extremely important issue. And as again, my friend Thomas Piketty has shown in his research, is that the world is changed to the better during long periods of fights. And I'm not meaning violent fights here, but verbal fights, demonstrations, strikes, movements like Greta Thunberg with the environment, leading the school pupils for a better world. So this is basically his findings, you know, to move the world into a better place. So to bring these issues into the different arenas, either it's consumers, politicians, or what, stakeholders, business, is very important. And when it comes to those big stakeholders that own or control the platforms, control the IE, it is extremely important that the political community is willing to regulate. You know, the ethics that are agreed, extremely important, but to put power behind it, you need to regulate as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Gard. Maybe Andreas wants to put something in this discussion.
Yeah, it's very easy. For example, in the medical domain, this is mostly driven due to legal aspects, because this is again, and we have to reference to Esma many times, because it is about responsibility. For example, if you apply artificial intelligence, whatever you call it now, machine learning algorithm in the medical domain, and something happens, then the question is who is responsible? Yeah, and at the moment it's still the doctor. Yeah, so therefore you have to ensure that in case of something happens, the algorithm or whatever it is called is retraceable, repeatable, understandable, that you can retrace why this came to this conclusion. So this question of why, this is explainability. So explainability is a very big issue. But again, I think the most important part is from you guys, because the human AI interfaces are the most important for the future, because it is about to understand, for example, for various, let's say, group of people. So it is not only the end user, it is also the expert, for example, that the expert designer, the algorithm developer has a better insight into the development process, that they can understand how this works and so on. So I think this is a really complicated process, and I think this will be lasting for the next, let's say, years. But I think the steps taken now are very good and in pointing into the right direction. So I think I can fully agree what has been said before.
I would like to add a comment, if I may.
Of course, Esma. Yes.
Thank you. So again, I will share my screen. I don't know if you see it or not.
Yes, you can see it.
Okay. So I mean, a few years ago with my students, I was working on the privacy policies, and I was trying to change the look of the privacy policies and look at the impact on the user, if he's gonna trust it or not. And I have a comment on this as well. It's because, you know, the privacy policies, we have problems. I mean, people do not read the privacy policies. They don't understand the content if they read them. They have a lack of knowledge and expertise so they cannot really make a decision. And sometimes they have difficulties because the decision itself is just kind of confusing. So it's a major issue, I mean, for the privacy policies. And thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Maybe if it's possible to see our user profile that is stored by these systems, then it will be easier for us to decide if this information has to be included in this profile or not. Because according to these features, the prediction happens. What do you think, Esma?
Sorry, I mean, my internet connection, I lost what you said. Can you please repeat it, please?
Yes, I said that if the user profile it's open to the users, so all the information that is stored behind the scenes that is not visible now, if it's visible to us, the different features that they are stored, then it will be easier for us to decide which information has not been included in this profile.
Yeah, I mean, that's ideal, but it will never happen. It will never happen, Konstantinos, never. That's my 2 cents.
It's going to be a foggy transparency after all. Yes. I think George Karidakis has raised his hand for quite some time.
Yes, thank you. Great talks. Thank you. I was wondering if you could comment. It would be lovely to have the commandment maker to comment also on the guidelines, the ethics guidelines and II that the European Commission released regarding their completeness and applicability. Thank you.
Maybe Gard, as more policy-related expert, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Well, sorry, I was lost for a moment, but just to take, I think the most recent agreement on ethics and artificial intelligence is the agreement that was achieved this week among the UNESCO member states, which are most countries of the world, and that agreement is can be read at the website of the UNESCO, where the main points are protecting data, banning social scoring and mass surveillance, helping to monitor and evaluate and protecting the environment. I must confess that I've not read carefully the European guidelines that you are referring to, but one way here is, of course, to compare those guidelines with what was agreed in UNESCO to see if there are discrepancies. I think the power of the European Union is that it can regulate as they have done with personal data in the GDPR. They can regulate. The problem with UNESCO is that they do agreements like this, and they can do a recommendation as this, but to put the recommendation in force, each country has to adopt it. So the paradox here is that countries can sit in UNESCO and vote for the recommendation, and when it comes back, and when they come back to their home country, this recommendation can be voted down. So you don't know if this recommendation will be fully implemented all over the world or only in some countries. The power of the European Union is when they agree on an issue and they decide upon it, it becomes a binding regulation for all member states, and also for Norway, by the way, which is not a member state, but associated country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're a bit over time, but maybe since this is a very interesting discussion, maybe you could take a couple of more questions if there is from the audience. I saw earlier that Professor Avouris wanted to ask something. I don't know if it's the technology that put the hand down or.
No, I thought we were running out of time, and that's why I withdrew.
Okay.
But I mean, it's. I want to first, after thanking everybody, and it's a really interesting discussion, I would like to refer to, which is a general comment. I mean, I like the presentation of the situation, which seems to be bleak according to what you said, and then the discussion went towards who is the audience of this discussion? I mean, who are you addressing? Is the policymakers? Is it? And it comes to, I've heard some of you referring to Piketty, which is a much stronger regulator guy who thinks you should regulate much more fiercely. And then it comes out as a discussion on ideology and politics. I mean, we like liberal society and live in freedom, but it seems that some of the things you are saying require regulation and political decisions which might change in somehow this. Do you think our societies are ready for this kind of regulation you're talking about?
Yeah. Did you ask me directly, or?
Well,
maybe Esma should
be any.
Esma, yeah.
I mean, it can be more than one, yes. So feel free to use on that. I mean, Gard, you can start if you want, and then or Esma, yes, feel free.
Sorry, I just want to understand. Are you referring to like the regulation that is being made? Is it like good for the society, and are people ready to accept it? That's your question, or something else? I'm not sure.
Well, I'll give you an example. There is
Yes.
the 10 commandments of on the health data.
Yes.
Some of them are feasible.
Yes.
Some are not feasible with the current technology, and some people were saying. So if you want to not make it just wishful thinking, but rather enforce this kind of commandments and to make it a practice which has to be enforced, then we need to regulate research, regulate activities, regulate the platforms or the policy, their way of conducting their business. I mean, are we ready as a global society or individual countries to do this, you think?
Well, it started already. For example, we have privacy by design. It's based on 7 principles, and it became a standard, an ISO standard recently. So this is just great, okay? But we still need to educate people, I guess, because education is everything. We need to teach students to consider the impact of what they will create, okay, in the future, because they will be our future decision makers. We need to educate AI developers and operators. We need to educate policymakers on real applications and show them the limitations and the issues. So, I mean, it's not only a technical innovation, it's all about education as well. And I do really believe that education will maybe make people one day, maybe not ready, but at least willing to accept these or part of the commandments. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Esma. Maybe Gard, yes, let's go with a round, maybe to share a final word before we close.
Yeah. Well, I think that society and humanity is there, that most of us understand that without regulation, the alternative is much worse. It is increased equity, equalities. It is exclusion instead of inclusion. It is leaving decisions to stakeholders that don't have good purposes. So we need to regulate to ensure that the interest of human beings, the interest of society is taken care of. And I don't think this, when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to platforms, this is basically not that different from when taxes was regulated from COP taxes to progressive taxes, for example. So today we have achieved a maturity in our society that we can use artificial intelligence, we can use digital transformation for the good, but to ensure that it is not used for the bad, it needs in some way to be regulated. And the level of regulation when it comes to on a global scale is that agreement that was achieved in UNESCO this week and has to be implemented country-wise. So that is my response. We have to move on. We have to move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gard. Andreas, your final statement?
I think he had to leave.
Yeah, he had to leave. His wife was whining. It's a family day.
Okay.
So
Yes.
we all have bosses, you know.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much all indeed for this. I think it was a really very multidisciplinary, I would say, approach to the questions that we had. And I'm sure that we could discuss for one more week if we would stay here, and there will be more questions. We touched the topic from different perspectives, either policies or computational or design. But of course, the truth is somewhere, I would say, in the middle as always. Okay, as Professor Aimeur was showing this morning in the keynote, HCI and related topics are always in the middle, affected by surroundings and context. But I believe that we frame very well the problem and the solutions, and the open topics, of course, are many, and they are there. There are some steps forward, definitely, but I think that we all agree there's quite some time still until we are there in the end.
I want to say something.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Panelists, for inviting me, and thank you for our dear moderator. And thank you for my colleagues. I mean, I had the opportunity to know now Andreas and Gard, and people who ask questions. And you know what? I mean, when I said yes to Panagiotis, I said yes very quickly. Do you remember this?
Of course I do.
Very quickly. I wanted to help, and I like people from Greece as well, and from the Mediterranean. I mean, I just think that this is just a wonderful first step, and I hope we will see each other in vivo some days. And thank you for having me. Thank you.
Professor Meimaris, I don't know if you want to share a couple of words, maybe in French.
Yes. I like to thank Dr. Germanakos and Associate Professor Michalis for their management of all the discussion. And especially this moment, I like to say thanks to all our keynote speakers as Alan Dix, Nuria Oliver, Nikos Avouris, and for the 2 days in this round table, Esma Aimeur, Andreas Holzinger, and Gard Titlestad. I think it was wonderful what was done today, and all the discussion, as Germanakos said, could have a duration of one more day or week, I could say. So we are waiting for you here in Athens, or in another place in Greece, or in your places. And we think that we'll work for the better user experience in general, for a better usability and accessibility, not only systems and computers, but also services and everyday life. Thank you very much to be with us.